Good morning. Happy International Women's Day. Welcome to our second annual breakfast. My name's Christy Ferrantella, and I'm the interim director of the Nantucket Chamber of Commerce. I wanted to start off by thanking all of you for coming this morning. The Chamber is thrilled to support women-owned, women-led, and women-supported businesses. We're very excited to integrate that into our mission, and we've been working hard over the past year to make sure that we create programming and events that support Nantucket women in business. We've been working with Petticoat Row, and we're going to continue this, especially over the upcoming year. In 2020, we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, and we're working with many organizations to celebrate women earning the right to vote. We're very pleased to be working with the NHA, Mariah Mitchell Association, and many, many others to celebrate this. For today's breakfast, I wanted to give a special thank you to the Enquirer Mirror to supporting this event, as well as Rockland Trust Nantucket Bank and the Nantucket Hotel and Breeze Restaurant. Thank you to Lemonpress for providing amazing food for this morning, and again, the NHA for providing the space. We couldn't have done this without you, and the Chamber is very excited to continue this tradition of supporting Nantucket women on Nantucket. I'm going to hand it over to James Russell, the director of the NHA, to talk a little bit about the upcoming events of 2020. Thank you.
Thanks, Christy, and good morning, everybody. So I've got to try this. I now know what it feels like to be part of the 1%. That's pretty good, right? I thought about that just a little while ago. I think it was a good line. So first of all, welcome. It's great to have you all here. As I'm looking around the crowd, I want to give a shout out to, you may have noticed some transformations around the museum as we get ready for the summer season. And Mary LaCourcier is doing some magic work in our new Discovery Center. And Mary Novissimo and Ed Rudd are doing some terrific work in here. So do take a couple of minutes to wander around once the events are over to see all that's going on. I want to talk specifically about, Christy, it's great to have the Chamber here. Thanks very much. Come all the time, every time. We just love the working relationship with you, and we absolutely love stealing David from you too. So, we love David. Okay, so if I could ask of you to do something for us, it would be appreciated. On your table is a sheet of paper, and it lists off a number of the events. And I'm not going to go through every one of these. You can read them. But on one side, there is a committee list that the NHA is putting together. And on the flip side is a list of tactical and strategic events which will run over the course of this year, but we hope will extend well into the future. Because as you look around and you think about the whaling story, let's be frank, it's predominantly a male-oriented story. However, when you think about the mission of the NHA, it is absolutely not. And we have to make sure that we imbue within these walls and around our properties a well-balanced story. So whether it is digitally, whether it's true education, or whether it's true exhibits, we want to make sure that the great stories of notable Nantucket women are told and told in abundance. And you'll see a list of the various activities that we're planning for this year. I hope you noticed when you walked in the door a sculpture of Lucretia Mott. See it on the way out if you didn't notice it on the way in. We've just purchased it from Vicky Garina. She worked with the National Park Service at Seneca Falls and created terrific sculptures there. And we hope to, at Hadwin House, and I'd be curious to get your impressions on this, if we were to dedicate Hadwin House with about 10 or 12 or so sculptures of notable women to give that garden a personality so people can walk and learn, remember, and read about some of these incredible people who shaped our island. So that, along with many other initiatives, are running through. I see Lucy Hare here. I'd encourage everybody to come back this evening when Dr. Christine Keneally from Quinnipiac speaks on Frederick Douglass and his trip from Nantucket to Ireland. So I think I've gone over my 3 minutes. I'll pass this right back to Christy. Great to have you here. Come often because this food is really, really good. Thank you.
Well, let's get the party started. We're very excited to celebrate Nantucket women. As I said, 2020, we're going to be celebrating the women of our past and obviously the women today that are making Nantucket what it is. So I'm going to hand it over to Denice Kronau, who's our moderator for today. She is the chair of the town's finance committee and was also a moderator last year, so we're very excited to have her back. She did an amazing job, so thank you, Denice.
Oh, seriously? That's the best you can do? People, I got up early for that. Good morning. Good morning. Yes, much better. So here's what I know. I love standing underneath a big whale. It's just fantastic. And I bet everyone knows what the acronym stands for. Women having an amazing leadership event. Yay! Okay then, so with that, Emily, Moira, Wendy, please come up. And take your seats, as you like. Sorry, I should have. Now, there's a trick with your microphones, which means only 2 microphones work at one time. But I explained to Mary, who explained this to me, that it's no problem because women don't talk over each other. Oh, snap. Okay. All right, so let's start. I'm going to start with Emily. Emily, I'll have you introduce yourself, tell a little bit about your background, and what I'd like you... Oh, no. And yes, go ahead. And then what I'd like you to do is talk about... You were just recently promoted to being the executive director. In your introduction, talk a little bit about how was that?
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much to the Chamber and NHA for hosting this event. I would say that essentially I am here as a scientist turned environmentalist who somewhere along the way discovered a desire to educate and communicate others on the importance and critical value that a healthy environment has to supporting healthy people. And to give a sense of where I've come from, I was an extraordinarily shy child. I would say, above all else, my sense of adventure propelled me forward, although that same sense of adventure has landed me my second ankle full of titanium, but that's another story. But my passion for science and biology was really expanded upon a little bit later on in life. I started out with career choices that led me to the remote mountains of Colorado, where I was camping for 5 days by myself, studying an endangered alpine butterfly. I spent a couple of months living on Muskeget with one other woman and a dog, doing bird research. So those were my ideal jobs. A lot of isolation, a lot of time alone in wild places. And that love of nature really led me into the field of ecology. But when I was in college, initially, I would say, I became very aware of and appreciative of environmental advocates. And I was so glad they were out there because I never wanted to do that. The idea of public speaking and being in the spotlight as a youngster was definitely not appealing to me at all. And yet here I find myself today as the executive director of an environmental advocacy group, trying to provide leadership and good science communication to a pretty extraordinary community. It's been quite a journey. I'm still surprised and astounded to find myself here. And again, in addition to a lot of support and encouragement along the way, I think it's really that natural curiosity and stepping outside of my comfort zone that has brought me to where I am. It's been a great year of transition for me. I've had a lot of support from the community, and I would say above all else, one of the most important parts my first year as in this leadership role has been just building and establishing relationships with other women and other people in the community.
Thank you, Emily. Wendy, over to you. Oh, now, when you introduce yourself, one of the things that always strikes me about you is your amazing capacity to give back. All the committees that you go on, all the things that you do, in addition to being a wildly successful entrepreneur, you've also been so involved in giving back to the community. So when you introduce yourself, please kind of speak to how that drives you.
Okay, well, thank you, Denice. Those are kind words. And I feel like it's so many threads, a little bit that Emily just said, apply to me too, about, never wanting to, or seeing myself as being like a speaker, or, every opportunity is such a challenge, and again, an opportunity for growth. So I'm grateful to you all. Because one never sees themselves sort of the way others do, I suppose, right? Like, that's shocking to me. Like, oh, cool, to hear those compliments. Because when I first came to Nantucket, and I first came in '88, worked at Bartlett's Farm during college, and in the 30 years that we've been here, it's, the reasons I came were nature, and, I was a philosophy major, and I read, and I was shy, and I read every book, which is what has led me to own Bookworks and Mitchell's. And after working at the farm, we had the opportunity, my husband and I started Cisco Brewers, for those of you who don't know. I always like to tell people that I was the home brewer first. I was home brewing with my friends in California during college and came back. So there's like a really strong female origin story there, which is, not everyone knows, but I'll keep trying to tell them. Because then my real love really was, sort of books. The thread of all that has always been community. I love to build community. I love to have fun with people. And I went to Smith College, which was an extremely strong feminist bent, of course, all women still. And, I just always felt that I, had a seat at the table. Like, there was just no question that, it's a matter of giving back, but it's also a matter of having an impact or participating. And I just always feel like I want to be involved in the community. I want to keep growing, and one thing just keeps leading to the next. So it's been, it's been great. Like, just a quick thing, when I was president of the chamber, at 1 year, and I got to, I did want a shout out to the chamber, and what an amazing group of women holding the fort there. I got to be at the top of Main Street, and my little son at the time was like, "Oh, Mama, I didn't know you were important," And I'm like, well, I feel it now, so the example that you set, you never quite know what you're doing. And I'll just also add, since I said the chamber, I have the honor of being on the board of the NHA right now, which is led by an incredibly powerful leader, Kelly Williamson. So having these mentors, sort of above and below, like you fit into a continuum, and I love that about this community. So, thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. I mean, that's the thing that always strikes me about Nantucket. I've done a lot of reading of history, and I'm going to quote it wrong because I don't remember what I read. But the point is, okay, whatever. I know people used to say to me, and I think I said this last year, so again, I'm repetitive, but maybe you all forgot. People would often say to me, especially at work, "Are you aware you do X?" And I'm like, sure, I'm hugely self-aware. What I am not is willing to change. So anyway, but what I love about Nantucket is the history of, it's always been a history of being very inclusive, very much women-based, because when the men went off to sea for months and years at a time, women stayed behind and ran the businesses. All these things. And when I look at, for example, right now, we have a woman who's the town manager, a woman who's the head of FinCom, a woman who's the head of Select Board, and a woman who's the head of Planning Board. And it's, gender is not a qualification for these jobs. Just being the right person is a qualification for these jobs. And I think that's something we can all take to heart, and we can all say we're happy we're in this community that has this. And now, Moira, over to you. And Moira, what I'd like you to speak to especially, and I'm so impressed by this, is that you can connect with people on so many levels because of what you do, but you can also connect with them in 5 languages. And being able to speak someone else's language is so amazing. Whenever I go anywhere, I always try to learn at least good morning, hello, thank you. And when first time I went to Sweden, I listened to it on tapes. And because, I'm 100 years old, and kind of, nearly as old as the whale. And on the tapes, it was a man. So I'm like, good dog, horbor du. And when I got to Sweden, I was like, so it's like, how do you say good day? Good dog. And like, why are you lowering your voice? I'm like, well, because I'm listening and repeating, good dog, horbor du. So Moira, over to you, please. I had to be a little bit of comedy, It's
Yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation from the Chamber to be here. And thank you, all of you, for showing up for yourself. I am very honored to be here. Coming here 20 years ago, it's very interesting because I'm looking at the stories beside me. There's some little trade, but really nothing similar, because when I came here, my intention when I left after 3 months in a winter day, it was to never come back. You know, you came from 90 degrees and you land on a small island when you don't drive, where you're working and things are not familiar. You know, that was my first big English experience. I came from Costa Rica, moving from Haiti to Costa Rica, and I land here. So that was my worst nightmare. So it's not the same. But speaking the languages, having the ability to adapt, to adjust on the island and be part of such a multicultural environment has increased my awareness of challenges and things and how to empower myself. The languages actually were a base for me, because after many years as a banker and starting to become a mental health counselor, first of all, I didn't know there was any problem on this island. None. Until I started, went to school and learning to just become, you know, more myself. And I figured there was gonna be a need for someone to be qualified to support people on island. I went to school while I was working 3 jobs, hustling. You know, all of you guys that have that history, 3 jobs, and I started to study mental health from 8 o'clock in the nighttime. And some days when I go to my second job, I will start getting from 11 o'clock until 3 o'clock in the morning. So I didn't know where I was going, but I had a dream. I felt that was something important for the island. And after I started my internship and I met with a few people at Fairwinds, and I started 9.5 years ago, I understand what mental health, physical health, or everything, holistic health is about. Currently, I provide holistic wellness to people on island. I do everything you can think of to see if I can support people mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. The languages are a huge base because the community for Hispanic here is huge, and sometimes it's difficult to find counselors that speak the language. But it's not only here on island, because when I speak to people around other cities and speaking in other venues, I realize there is a shortage for multicultural counselors, holistic healers in general. So I am here to bring some hope, some entertainment as well, because I don't take life too seriously. You know, after I moved to Nantucket and staying here, I realized just live life. You know, as women, we tend to put ourselves in a box. We competitive, we do a lot, but I don't think we value enough what we do, because we always have this question mark. Am I good enough? Am I deserving this position enough when you're really, really well qualified? So today it's an invitation for all women here and around the world to just say enough. Enough. I don't have to compare myself with anyone. I feel good. I feel good on my skin, good at what I do, and keep on shining, growing, and just stop comparing yourself. You know, at some point, I made the decision to stop comparing myself. And I can't tell you how good that feels.
Thank you, Moira. Excellent. Now here's the fun part. We're going to do a quick speed round that I didn't prep you for. So, yes, I love this. And so just to have people get to know a little bit about you, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Tea.
There we go. Beach or mountains?
Both.
Beach or mountains? Yeah, either one.
Both.
Mountain.
Okay, thank you. Red Sox or Celtics?
Sorry, I don't care.
Wendy and I should hang out more because ditto.
Both, actually.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Dog or cat?
We have a dog, and my daughter's here, so I have to say, dog.
Dog or cat, Emily?
Now cat.
Dog.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. I've got a couple quick questions for the panel, and then we're going to open it up so you can all ask questions, because you're not here just to hear my questions. I know that. I'm self-aware, remember? So, okay. Wendy, if you could distill everything you've learned in business and everything you've learned in life and everything you've learned in all your community action to 3 key points, the 3 things that you say, if I only get to tell people 3 things, what would they be?
Woo, no prep. All right. Very fresh in my mind is an awesome Dare to Lead book club that that Melissa Murphy and Jen Cohen just put together, and there's several in the room that we've been meeting, and we just had the last meeting last night for 4. So it's Brene Brown's book, Dare to Lead. I highly recommend it to everybody. It's just got so many gems, mostly that small things are important in the little interactions you have, that seems small, and I have tended to sort of brush things aside in a lot of ways, over the years that don't seem important. It builds up. So it takes courage to, really deal with small problems. It's so obvious to me in retrospect. But like in nugget size, her one really good one that I'm trying to live to now is courage over comfort. Just lean in and, the parlance of the day, just deal with stuff. Another really good one that somebody told me long ago was you owe it to the good people to deal with the bad. It's sort of along that line. If somebody's coming in late or whatever small thing, Nantucket, it needs to be addressed. And you really, the culture will deplete if you don't sort of address that. Really the biggest one in life is to just show up, just to go to the meeting and get involved. And that's really probably, I don't want to take too much time, so that's the one. Excellent, thank you. Moira, see, I'm not going in order. Have to pay attention the whole time. What advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Wow.
Okay, I realize you're 21, but...
Yes, thank you. I love you, Denice.
I love you too.
Advice to my 21 self. I think as a young woman, we tend to be trained to be put into a box, to let our dream be covered and smothered by our cultural limitations. What I would say to my 21 self is be patient and also trust the process, because you don't know what you are made of until you face circumstances. You don't know what you're made of until you decide, you make a decision. You will start to shine no matter what, because your intention will determine your outcome. Let yourself breathe. Let yourself be free. And then also, don't be afraid. Because I think when I looked a little bit on my 20s, I didn't know too much where I was going, but I know I had to go somewhere. I didn't know my path would lead me here, but to become here on island, international bestseller 2 times. Okay, I didn't see it coming. To even my languages, I didn't think I would be speaking 5 languages and helping people nationally and internationally. By the way, visit me next 2 weeks. I'm gonna be at the library for my book signing. Come by. And it's also so interesting because once you start trusting the process, the steps, one by one, you become just infectious. And then people take you for who you are. And I think that's something I will say to my 21 self. Just trust the process.
Thank you. I would tell my 21-year-old self to just chill, relax. It's amazing what I worried about. And what I thought was, oh my gosh, is this and what's next and what's all these things? And now looking back, 3 years, I'm a little bit older than Moira, I was so intense at the time, and it all worked out fine. So, Emily, I'm going to move over here just because I've had my back to the room most of the time, I just realized. We are not theater in the round, so, oh my gosh, look at all those people. So, you've had some really interesting pivots. I really love the fact that you said the last thing you wanted to be was an advocate, the last thing you wanted to be was talk to people, the last thing you wanted to do, and here's what you're doing. So talk about the catalysts that help you through that transitions.
Okay, the catalysts that led me here. I would say that all of the catalysts that have brought me along the way and led to changes in my path or direction that led me here had to do with unexpected opportunities and really being open to those opportunities and seeing them where you don't necessarily want to see them. I think it's easy to plan a way forward, and when something comes along that seems a little bit off of your natural path, to ignore it or find a reason not to engage it. But being open to those unexpected opportunities, I think, is really important. There were definitely points in my life where I was ready to move to Australia. I was going to go back to school, and Nantucket has really been the biggest catalyst of change in my life. Coming here, taking my first job for the Land Council, and really being open to challenging myself with things that I never thought I could succeed at. And so being willing to step outside of that box, as somebody already said, and go for something that you weren't necessarily planning on, and even something that actually scares you. When I was first offered the job as ecologist for the Land Council back in 2004, a big part of me didn't want to take it because, again, the idea of being an advocate and standing up in front of boards and regulatory agencies and having to comment on development proposals was not something that I wanted to do. But I noticed how afraid I was of those aspects of the job, and something in me said, I don't want to be afraid of doing that. I want to step outside of the box and really try to build my own confidence because I believe that I can do this. And that was one of the things that really drove me to take the job, my discomfort with the idea of it. So I would say that those catalysts in my life have been when I have stepped outside of that box and really moved towards something that at first I didn't think was for me or that I was made for.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I grew up in a small town in upstate New York. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. And so if you had predicted that I would be working for big multinational corporations and be a CFO and a CEO, it never would have been predicted based on my background. But one of the things that I always had inherently was, instead of if someone offered me a new job, instead of asking, well, why should I take it? I always asked myself, why not? what would be about this job that I wouldn't want to be doing it? And usually I didn't find any reason at all. And I also had the luck, probably like all of you and everyone in the room, of having many jobs that no one had had before me. So they couldn't tell if I wasn't doing it right. Yeah, I'm opportunistic on many levels. Okay, I'm not going to ask any more questions. We're going to turn it over to the audience to make sure you all have plenty of time to ask questions. Who has a question? In the back. I'm going to run and hand you my microphone. Hi, Cavell. How are you? See, I called her name, and now everybody knows her name.
Morning, Denise. Nice to see you. My question is for Moirar. I've been here 20 years, and I look around the room, and it's pretty much the same women of color that are at all the events that I go to myself, Lily, yourself. How can we get women from other countries to be a part of Nantucket, to voice what they do, to be more incorporated in the community, and to showcase their talent? How can we make it more appealing to them?
Thank you for this question. It's something that I've been thinking a lot, and I'm glad you asked. I had the honor to be part of the Nantucket project twice, and they spoke a lot about neighborhood. And one of the things I realized is that the opportunities that I have as a woman of color, there's a lot of the women of color on the island that very well educated, that I think that set themselves into a box or don't have the opportunity to show up or bring themselves forward. I think as you and I, we have some work to do. We can together, and all the women that are here, just do our part. We are a good melting pot. So that's important that each of us, we recognize the woman beside you as a woman of value. I think it's not a question for me anymore of women of color. It's just being a woman and understand the value you bring in the family, in this community, no matter what the position you are holding, no matter what the job you are doing. I think as many aspects of us keep us away from bringing ourselves forward. Of course, there is the job aspect. I can tell you, if you invited me a year ago, I would not be here because I was working 60, 70 hours a week. So sometimes it's not, maybe those women don't want to be here, but they have the job to do. And I think if we reach out, and any member in the community that want to reach out to me and just want me a little bit more time available now. So I'll be more than happy to connect with you and make something happen. And then I have been thinking about it. I have reached out more to other communities on the island, Latino. There's still a lot of work to do, so I'm inviting anyone that have some connection. I am a motivational speaker. I speak the languages. I'm the only Portuguese speaking on island for counseling. So if somebody wants to be part of a group and you want me to be there, bring them together, I'll be more than happy. But this is very valid, what you just said. Thank you.
It's so generous. Thank you, Moira. When I was chief diversity officer for Siemens, which it's a $100 billion company, 400,000 employees, 190 countries. My job was to make sure every voice was heard, which sounds like an easy job. I know you think that. I can see it on all of your faces. Wow, that's a really easy job. And I'd ask you, and I'm sure I did this last year, to look at your hands. Everybody take a look at one of your hands. And if you see that each finger is different, and your hand would not function if all your fingers were the same, if it was all thumbs or all pinkies. So our motto always was 5 different fingers, but 1 strong hand. and extend that hand to someone who isn't like you. I used to encourage anyone to say, go up to someone you don't know and isn't like you, clearly isn't like you, and say, let's go have a coffee, or let's go have a lunch together, and just talk to them, because you'll find out that there's absolutely more points in common than there are differences. And once that bridge is made, then it's easy to make the next one. Next question. Oh, come people. I have tons of questions that I can ask them, but I just thought you guys would be way more interesting than mine.
I'm Lily. I'm not sure this is more of a question. It's just more of a contribution. I just sort of want to contribute. Again, I'm also a woman of color myself. I sort of want to piggyback a little bit on what Cavell was saying, because again, I do think that it's so important that we contribute. One of the things I will say, and I've been thinking about this a lot, is, and I said this to someone not so long ago, is part of the issues that we face is due to our inability to see ourselves in the other. And one of the things I will say is, in many ways, I am a woman of color of much privilege. I've been given so many opportunities that I don't see other women of color have. I've also been in positions where I'm in a management position and the person above me has just flat out told me they do not want to hire other people that are of color. So there are so many realities that when you sit at this side of the table, you face that others don't see. And I think that's something that's important to talk about, because, I'm mixed. So oftentimes what I would find is in my positions, people who are of authority, who would just willfully tell me racist things against other racist people, against other minorities. So the only reason why I'm saying this is because I do have majority of my friends, I would say majority of my circle here in Nantucket are predominantly white, which, there's obviously nothing wrong with that, but also, I do realize I'm a minority, so clearly the people that I would be surrounded would be people that look a little bit different than me. What I notice is sometimes, because their reality is so different than mine, when the issue of race is brought up, there's a tendency to believe that there's a race card being pulled. And I think that's because they cannot see your reality. So when you complain about something that is legitimate, sometimes you are not heard. And I don't think it's because that person is bad. I've learned to have compassion in these situations because I'm also trying to see the other in myself. So me putting myself in their position and understanding that they simply just cannot see my position. Do you know what I mean? And I think if we have compassion both ways and understanding that we just have different realities, we can really go a long way, so that no one is felt, so that women who are in positions of sort of in a disadvantage are not felt as though they're not being heard. And I really love what you just said as far as reaching out to people that look different than you, because perhaps by you doing so, you could sort of maybe understand why myself and perhaps Cavell would have the outlook that we have, because we come from a place of experience versus you may be coming from a place of only what you've heard. And that's a completely different thing. So I just want to add that, because oftentimes when I do see, or even women who sometimes do sit at the side of the table like myself, we may not feel very comfortable joining in the conversation because we are different. You know what I mean? It's sort of being the elephant in the room, and just sort of understanding that. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, really. Thank you for being so brave. That's really a brave thing to say. When I was working in London years ago, our work did a function called KAPOW, Kids and the Power of Work. And so we were trying to teach inner city London kids how that work is good, that education is good, get a good education so you can get a good job. And so we went to inner city school where 70% of the kids were living just below the poverty line and were single family homes. And my job and another colleague's was to teach math to these kids for one session. The teachers were notably nervous, right? And so my little group sitting around me, and I say, who likes math? And they're like, I said, okay, and this is when Michael Jordan was a big star. And I said, okay, is Michael Jordan a big star? Yes. Does he make lots of money? Yes. How do you think he counts it? Math. Now everybody likes math. So I said, okay, everybody jump up and down like Michael Jordan. So they all did that. And the teacher's looking at me like, what are you doing? So one little girl says to me, do you have kids? You're so good. And I said, no, I'm not married. Because unconscious bias, whether we realize it or not, is just part of our DNA. None of us think we're racist. None of us think we're biased. But I grew up in a Catholic family. So, sorry, Mom, I had sex before marriage. But just don't tell my dad. He would be heartbroken. But that was my first instinct to say, no, I'm not married. And then remembering the statistic of 70% of these kids are from single parents. And then I said, and I don't have kids. But she's 8, she's smart, she knew that I already blew it. But that's the thing about us. We will make these mistakes, and I think the brave thing to do is to call them out, and to call them out yourself. Like, oh, you know what? I just put my foot right in this, and I'm so sorry. Next question.
I just wanted to give a real thank you for the Chamber because of this great conversation that we're having. This is just the second year here on Nantucket that we are celebrating International Women's Day. And as I was listening to the panel, to me it seemed like the common thread were these wonderful, if I call them, accidental mistakes that became, the golden thread through your career. And through this opportunity of this conversation, we're creating a great conversation in regards to we want more, inclusion of the diversity that we have on Nantucket. So I think that's a real nice opportunity for us all. And secondly, I wanted to mention, if I can do so, that I am going to be hosting a women's gathering at the end of this month, and it was one of the forethoughts that I had on the panel to make sure that the panel did represent the diversity of women on Nantucket, because I think there's so much that we have to offer together, as women and as women of color and different backgrounds. I feel like just being a Southerner myself when I first came here 30 years ago, that there were certain limitations and maybe sometimes expectations just put on me just because of a different background. So I think sometimes it's maybe not just our color, but it can just be wherever we're from. So I really like the analogy of, 5 fingers in one hand, lending that hand out. And I have personally felt that Nantucket has been a very welcoming, community to me. I love the fact that I could go to board meetings in my hiking boots and a backpack on my bicycle. I love telling my kids that story, and they can't believe it. But I do think that on the whole, Nantucket is a very welcoming and embracing community. And so it's really creating more opportunities versus the limitations. And I think this is a good opportunity for us all. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Denise, can I?
Wendy.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Oh, Wendy, I was going to hand it over to you anyway. See, we've done like a Vulcan mind meld here. I love that. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to Jennifer Costanzo, because your women's gatherings in the past have been fantastic, and that's, the more the merrier. I went down the rabbit hole on the internet this morning of like International Women's Day, the female lead, like all the organizations, because at that book club last night we were talking about the theme for this year is Each for Equal, and we were kind of like, little awkward, doesn't roll off the tongue. What do they mean? So I was diving into that a little bit this morning, and it's exactly to this point, and it's sort of like with it, we can all do better in every way, as you just said, Denise. And it makes me think of something that, so many things are accidental in the connections that one thing leads to another, as I mentioned and Emily did, but I have been trying to be more deliberate in okay, now I've got this access, what do I need to go the next level? So I wanted to mention, I went and completed an MBA at Babson in a virtual, it's an online and in-person learning. And my idea there, which is going to be way harder than I thought, but I saw that they need more women on boards. And I'm like, I want to do that. I could do that. But if I was looking at me just being on Nantucket and I was trying to move into something in a Boston-based something, I would want more credentials. So, okay, I'm going to get that for myself. And I went for it, and Liz, I see you, every day at the High Line. I was going back and forth to school. And, it's just like, okay, just open the door. Like, what do I need a little bit more? And I just think, and I love what Cavell and Lily, what you just said, because I struggle with, with the bookstores, for example. I want them to be like a hotbed of inclusion, and Cecil with Remain, like this is our goal in Vienna. But cracking that nut and getting everybody in the full community to come to town, and I don't speak 5 languages, only whatever, 1.5. And how can we all brainstorm this together? Because it's a really important question. So I just wanted to thank you for raising those things. Sorry.
Thanks, Wendy. That's great.
Hopefully that was what you were going to ask me, Denice.
That's absolutely what I was going to ask you, Wendy.
Good morning. My name is Pauline. We've got 3 incredible female leaders in our community up there, and I'd like to know from each of you, what is your leadership style? And can you talk about maybe some situations where your style has really come into play and what you've learned from that?
Great question. Emily, do you want to go first?
Sure, I can start with that one. So my leadership skills really were developed, I would say, when I was in college and I got involved in my university's outing club. And I began leading trips for other students from 2 to 7 days long, backpacking trips. And in that sense, I would say that my leadership style was developed as one of a teacher and mentor, and helping to make people feel comfortable and engaged and encouraged to contribute whatever they have to contribute to a given situation. So that has definitely carried forward for me, and my role at the Land Council initially developed as more of an educator as well. I spent a lot of time in classrooms and working with the youth on Nantucket doing environmental education programs and field trips where, again, I got to help make kids feel comfortable outside, sort of outside of their comfort zone. In general, that's still what I bring with me to all situations. I think that collaboration and cooperation, teamwork is a really great way to go, empowering everybody to see and figure out what their own strengths are and how they can contribute to the whole, whatever the end goal is what I really try to strive to do. I think that rather than sort of dictating, sometimes you can help to direct people, but really getting full participation from all involved, I think would be what my style focuses around.
Hello? Okay. As a young woman, I was trained to really serve. I have a long career of bringing people together. I was supposed to be a nun, by the way, just so you guys know. That's true. I spent quite a few years in the convent, and things changed, so I'm here now. So I learned at early age how to bring people together, how to empower people to take control of their own life. So my way of leadership, especially to bring you together to understand you are the leader in your life. It's making sure you know that each of you, everybody that I meet, that you are capable. You know, a leader is who rally people together, not who boss people around. You know, we have a tendency to think as a leader, we hold the top. We do things and we don't really think, mindful of the other people's feelings, if they really have blood as we do. But if you are a leader, you are very compassionate. You want the other people to shine. You want the other people to just be brilliant. Not because beside you, you have people you can dominate, make you a leader. So I understand my style, it's just rally people, bring people together, and empower them to do the best they can. And that make you really feel good, because there's no really worst thing when you go to your bed at nighttime and you question, oh my God, what did I do today? Why did I do that? I can't sleep, I can't tell you. But often I realize the next 5 seconds, I'm laying down and I'm asleep. So that says, okay, you did a good job today. So I'm telling you, I'm inviting you, question yourself at the end of the day. How did you sleep when you go to bed? Just quick revision of your day as a leader in your community. What have you done today to change one person's life? To bring this person forward? No matter what profession you are, no matter what field you are capable. And if you're here, you are a woman of power. Use your power the right way. Thank you.
Thank you, Moira. Wendy?
Nope, didn't work. Love all that. Yeah, I think it's so interesting because we've been doing all this thinking, as I mentioned in the book club, but the leadership opportunities I see for myself are probably to do a better job of giving, of empowering people just the way you described, because I feel like I'm a little too casual, a little too accepting, as I referenced that before just a bit, and I'm looking for ways for growth that's going to be more exciting for all of us. So I am looking back all the different boards I've been on. I think I have one good story that's a little bit relevant to something. So I'm a big advocate for getting involved with your trade associations for whatever business you're in. The American booksellers, independent booksellers of the country are a really tight-knit group, some of my best people, friends. And then through that, I got involved with the Retailers Association in Massachusetts through the sales tax fight for equity with Amazon. Like we have to pay whatever when you come into our stores here, you pay tax. Didn't used to have to pay Amazon. That pissed me off really bad. So I wanted to fight that. Got involved with the Retailers Association of RAM. Great. Went to meet their people. Great. Went to their first meeting, and it was like a room. Their board is about 40 white men in their 60s, and I was like, come on, guys, like whatever. And as I said, I sat at the table, even though I wasn't really sure if I should. And just kind of the leadership style I'm getting to was sort of to be like challenging, but not, I guess it's a Grace Grossman thing. Maybe some of you have heard, like to be disagreeable. To disagree without being disagreeable. Or there's another phrase that I've heard, it's to be a happy activist, to be like, ha-ha, you can do better, ha-ha, Let me help, And so now, like, just a few years later, I'm on the executive committee of RAM, and I'm getting put on all these state commissions as a result of this. So that's what I mean by the connections, but it's really, like, challenge, and hopefully lead by example. I guess that might be another good one, because I really have high expectations of myself and of others, but I try not to be a jerk about it.
Excellent. When I've managed lots of people because I work for big corporations and got to be quite senior in some of these corporations. And so I always said to my employees, I will be a manager in 2 ways. Number one, when you make a mistake, I will stand right alongside of you. Because if you've made a mistake, we made it together. I wasn't paying attention to what you did or whatever. You didn't have the training, or I put you in something that you couldn't succeed at. So I will stand, actually, initially I'll stand in front of you and take the bullet, because there's a bullet coming, and then I will stand alongside you until we can get it fixed. And when you do something amazing, you stand out in front of everyone alone, because I already have the big job. So this is your moment to shine. And I always thought that if I didn't work for leaders that did that, I didn't want to work for them. So in my early career, you take the jobs you need to take to get the experience that you need to get. And in your later career, yay, you get to pick your boss, because you have enough experience to be able to say, no, thank you. And I think that's also important, because we spend a lot of time working, right? None of us are working 20-hour weeks, none of us. And so to that extent, And then one other trick I have in terms of, the 3 lessons from leadership, it's the 3 R's: respect, recognition, reward. Respect, I often worked with people, frankly, I didn't like, that worked for me. And when you take over a new organization, you inherit who's there. And, not everybody is copacetic, right? Not everybody gets along. And I had this one guy who managed to get on my last nerve every day. Every day. He found a way to jump on my last nerve and stomp all over it. But what he was saying to me was not wrong. His delivery was awful, fingernails on a chalkboard, but he wasn't wrong. So I learned to say, he's a human, same as me. He's equal, same as me. Yes, he works for me, but his ideas are important. And I have to get past my aversion to the way he kind of rams them down my throat and try to encourage him to do better. Steve, do better! That's how I encouraged him. I'm gonna kill you! But, okay, so we made it through and we actually got to a good version. So, but you have to respect, and it's particularly important to respect people who are different than you. And because our natural tendency is to kind of hang out with people who are very similar. But a world of little Denices, whilst I would think it's enchanting, would be absolutely boring. And there's no creativity there at all. Recognition, even the littlest things. We used to do once a month, thank you for making a visible difference. And it could be something as simple as cleaning out the filing cabinet. Suzanne, thank you for cleaning out the filing cabinet. You've made all of our lives easier because now we can all find stuff. And people were just like, oh. And it's amazing, but that little bit of recognition, thank you. I think thank you are the 2 most powerful words in the world. And last, reward. I had a guy one time that our corporate policy was 3% raises. I got him a 15% raise, big, long, boring story. I won't go into it. And I said, Stefan, I got you a 15% raise. And he's like, okay, good, now let's go through our list. I'm like, what? What? Why aren't you jumping up and down? And he said, I'm not motivated by money. Oof. So, and he had worked for me for 2 years at that point, and I didn't know that. So rewarding people in the way they want to be rewarded. So do you know your team and your staff and your employees well enough to know what makes them happy? Some people, it might be more time off. Some people, it might be conducting the tours at Cisco because they want to be stand-up comedians, so they're going to, work their... Thank you. Yay! Yay! I don't have to know anything actually, right? I can just make it up? Okay, perfect. I love this. I got a new job. So those are the 3 R's: respect, recognition, reward. Okay, now more questions. Otherwise, I have a question for Wendy. Failure. How do you deal with failure? Because I think most of us, especially, I'm like type AAA. When I make a mistake, it sits in my head and keeps me awake for days. And frankly, no one else cared except me. So how do you deal with failure?
At first, it felt like one of those tests, and you're like, failure. I'm like, is not an option.
Boom, would have done that. That would have been cool. New speed round. Failure.
Yeah. Of course, and every like business book you read is like, failure's awesome, and you will learn so much. And I guess, of course, I will just do what you just described, and you describe lying in bed and like freaking out and whatever. I guess I've been insulated from, like I said, I kind of tend to sail along and not really put myself out there for too big drops. There is a case where like I thought I had negotiated myself a position of importance with we did like a beer deal recently, and so we kept part and we sold part, and I'm like, we sold that part, but I'm going to be like the boss of that part too. And it didn't work out that way, of course. Corporate America, I should have come to you first. It's it's tough, and so I'm like, all right, well, how am I going to be proactive? How am I going to like not just get into this depression and be pissed about it? Like, where do we go from here? What's the next move? And try to be the chess. So I think that's what kind of protects me. Or just think more widely and go to something else, because there's so much need. That was sort of another thing I meant to say here, was like we need readers so desperately. The times are so, like fraught with peril for, there's so many opportunities, businesses to start, like just across the board. If something isn't working in one direction, just have that optimism and turn it to something where you really can have some impact and where you do shine and, get out of that one failure box.
Thank you. Moira, same question, please.
Failure, not an option. Over the years, what I have learned, there's no failure. It's only learning. Every step I make take me to the next step. So I learn if I ever fall, to fall face up. So I can get up, because once you see the sky, you have hope. You can get up. So for me, every time there's something that did not work out, it's an opportunity for me to learn to be better, to increase my speed, to go and learn more, and just become better at what I do. I think over past few years also, before I do this career move, I learned to even forgive better, because I feel everybody that have been around me on my way, or just to even have any intention to put me down, I forgive you. Because what I do, I turn it as a learning opportunity. Because I remember a few years ago when I was struggling in my job, and a simple word turned me into just a seeker. So when I get put down in any opportunity, for me, it could be a failure, that I fell at something or someone I didn't meet expectation, or someone that trying to make me feel less than. So what I do now, I say, wow, thank you. I say thank you for giving me this awareness that I don't belong here anymore. So for me, there's no failure anymore, because it's all about your perception. 90% of your behavior, what's the way you react to things, gonna change the way you see things. So 10%, if you think you can absorb it and you can just react differently to it. But my 90%, it's all about forgiveness, understanding, compassion, because everybody is trying to do the best they can with what they have. So I'm trying my best to go inside of me and learn the lesson that I'm given the opportunity to learn at that moment. So failure is no longer an option.
Thank you. Emily, same question, please.
All right, well, I love what Moira just said, and I'm going to echo some of that sentiment. I definitely see failure as just a word to some extent, and it's a word that has this finality attached to it, which I think we can just dispel right away. It absolutely is an opportunity for growth. That's what I always remind myself. I think that it's never easy to be in a position where you feel like you haven't succeeded at something, but what has been most important for me is to really start to see the humility that we all have to bring to situations. I'll just hold it closer. Humility, and just the important perspective of, as I think was said earlier, not necessarily taking yourself too seriously, and life in general. There is huge value and importance to different perspectives out there. Failure is a matter of perspective, and it is always an opportunity. I have found along the way that one of my greatest strengths has come from being open to different perspectives and trying not to take things personally. and understanding that everyone's entitled to their different view and perspective based on their own experience and where they have come from. And they're not always going to align with yours. And that's what creates diversity and creates growth all around. So those, again, are never easy moments, and there's no way to really sugarcoat that, but understanding that it's not the end. We don't have to take ourselves too seriously, and there's always a good opportunity for growth and a way forward from those scenarios. Absolutely.
Thank you. My one of my superpowers, besides thinking I'm horribly entertaining, I'm like Red Skelton for people who are old enough to remember that, laughing at my own jokes when no one else does, is to say I was wrong. I am the first person, as soon as something happens, I go, I was wrong. And my inner roommate tells me, did anyone die? As long as no one died, you're fine. So, the I was wrong really diffuses a tense situation. And it also accepts, you're fully accepting. I think accepting what's your responsibility is just such a great thing to do. It's not easy. Sometimes you take a beating for it, right? You made this big mistake. I'm like, yep, I was wrong. Okay, now how do we get past it? And so I think that's echoing, but I'm going to absolutely remember Moira with fall facing up. I'm not sure I have the skill set to do that. I tend to go forward when I trip, but there you go. I'm going to learn
have that skill set.
Twist. So, okay, we have time for one more audience question, or I still have a whole 3 pages of them. No? Okay, I'm going to grab my 3 pages of questions and ask one more question, and then I'm going to ask the panel to wrap up so we have time for networking. Oh, dear. Oh. What moment, if you think about, it can be in your life, it can be in your work, it can be you as a human, what was a moment that really inspired you? Emily, I'll start with you.
One of my earliest memories of inspiration, and of course I would say this is more in hindsight than realizing it at the time, and even though it may seem somewhat cliche, it was absolutely monumental for me, again, in hindsight, was when I was of the age where my mother realized I was old enough for her to leave me at home alone after school and she could begin her career. And she went out and found herself a temporary job, and she went and found some coursework to do. She ordered her own textbooks and taught herself about computers, and now she runs the information technology department in a pharmaceutical company. And in hindsight, again, watching her over the years, having moved to the country from Australia just before I was born, to kind of put her foot in the door of our system and create a place for herself in the workforce has been incredibly inspiring for me.
Thank you. Moira?
For me, it's about 10 years ago, I asked one of my supervisors a question, and my supervisor looked at me with some eyes of the worst you can think of, the stupidest person you can think of around her. And she said, Moira, this is not rocket science. I'm like, well, that was the worst word she could say to me. Because at that moment, what I was doing is just trying to understand what I have to do. At that moment, I said to myself, it is not rocket science, you don't belong here anymore. It's not rocket science that you need to do something better. So that's when I decided to go back to school, and I started like crazy. Like, when you get one word to push you forward, I can tell you, this is amazing. I started determined. My career is supposed to be 6 years. I did it in 3.5 years. By the way, I passed out one day. The ambulance came for me because I was studying so much. I didn't care about it because I said, I got to do something better. And every opportunity for me to even do some kind of internship and changes, I was put on a big barrier in the face, and I said, okay, I'll figure it out when the right time comes. So I figured things out on my own because of it's not rocket science. Let me tell you, it's not rocket science to know that you are beautiful. It's not rocket science to know you are amazing. You just have to take the word and suck it in. Take the opportunity that's given to you and change your life. And that's what I have done. And I got inspired every day by that moment when I remember that I think so much less than of myself. I really was struggling financially, emotionally, and I was struggling psychologically. I didn't know what was my next step was going to be, but I knew that I had to make one more step that wasn't here anymore. So this word and finding ways to just figure out my own life and be inspired by so many women out there that have achieved successful outcome, but out of nothing. I'm talking, today we celebrate the 100 year of women right to vote. Susan B. Anthony, Mabel Lee, Mother Teresa, you name Maya Angelou, all of these women. I start reading like crazy. If you don't have any mentor, find a book. Go to the library. Go to the Wendy Hudson, have it there. Don't go to Amazon, she said. So find opportunity to just find a mentor and believe in yourself. And things are out there for you to grow and rise. It's there. Look for it. You are amazing, all women out there.
Thank you. Wendy, same question. What's inspired you?
I love both those things. That's great. I'll just bring it to something a little more recent, which was this week with Elizabeth Warren. I don't know if everybody saw her her speech, after withdrawing from the race, and it was just awesome. I said this last night. I was like, how did she have the presence? And she just was like, you know what? I'm just going to keep fighting the fight. And she just really reaffirmed going back to her values and, that she's not quitting. Like, that was a failure. That was just, I found that just incredibly inspiring because, you can get really depressed these days. And that was just fantastic. So that's a good one for me.
Good, thank you. So I'm going to close now because I want to make sure you all have plenty of time to network because I know lots of people don't want to ask questions in a big group, but they're more than happy to swarm up here afterwards. And to Moira's point, there's no I used to say to everyone I ever dealt with, the only stupid questions are the ones you don't ask. And just your question is never ever going to be stupid. There's never ever going. So I always encourage people. And if I have one piece of career advice for everyone, it's ask. Ask for what you want. And when you do that, explain why it's good for the organization, why it's good for your boss or your colleagues, and why it's good for you. And because you're already living in the no state, right? So if you ask and they say no, life hasn't changed. And I want to thank the NHA, I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this, and I want to leave you with, I always get emotional at this point. It's ridiculous. I've quoted this 1,000 times in my career, and it still makes me emotional. Margaret Mead. And I've forgotten the quote. Okay, I'll use Sir Isaac Newton because I forgot Margaret Mead's quote. Oh my gosh. Okay, whatever. I'm as old as the whale, as I've explained. If I have seen further, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants. Everyone in this room is a giant. Everyone in this room has boosted someone up on their shoulders to go further. Thank you for being those people. Thanks to the panelists. You were fantastic. I loved moderating you. In fact, you were self-moderating, really. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. Wait, I remembered. Never doubt that a small group of people can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has.
Thank you, Denice, and thank you to everybody on the panel. Thank you to everybody for coming and to our sponsors. And I just wanted to give a huge shout out to the Chamber team, Carmen Kaler, who put together this entire event, Marina Jube, our Director of Marketing, and Laura Gray, our Membership Director. We're small, but we're mighty, and we're so thrilled to work with you this upcoming year. Thank you.